Good morning. Today we're going to solve equations without clearing fractions and decimals. So we're just going to keep the decimals and the fractions in our problem as we work through the problem to get our answer. They're not going to be multi-step equations. They're 2 or 3 step tops. So most of them will still be 2-step equations. You just have to think a little bit more with the fractions and decimals. So on number 1, we have decimals. We need to solve for x, so we're going to undo the plus 2.1 first. We're going to subtract 2.1 from both sides. And we get sometimes a decimal is hard to make on this. So we get 0.3x equals 2.1. And we're going to divide both sides by 0.3. And you're left with x equals 7. So very similar to what we did last week. It's just now we're going to mix in some fractions and decimals with our problems as we work through this week. When we have fractions, we are going to still solve for x, so we're going to add 1/3 to both sides. But we have to remember the rules of adding or subtracting fractions if necessary. And when we add or subtract fractions, we need to have common denominators. So our common denominator here is going to be between 4 and 3. It's going to be 12. So I'd take 4 times 3 to get 12, which means I have to take 3 times 3 to get 9. So 3/4 turns into 9/12. To get a 12 over here with 1/3, I'm going to have to multiply the bottom by 4. So I need to multiply the top by 4. So 1/3 is equivalent to 4/12. So now we have negative x on the left side of our equal sign equals, when we're adding fractions, we're going to add the numerators. So 9 plus 4 is 13, and the denominator stays 12. Now, if negative x equals positive 13/12, then that means positive x equals negative 13/12. If you have a negative on this side, you can make it positive if you make the other side negative. Because mathematically, if we divide both sides by -1 here, those negatives would cancel. X divided by 1 is x, and positive 13/12 divided by -1 is negative 13/12. So just watch your signs there. On number 3, we are going to have to subtract 1 from both sides. When we're subtracting fractions, again, you have to get a common denominator. So the common denominator here is going to be 8. So -1 turns into -8/8. So when you are subtracting fractions, you subtract the numerators, and you're going to keep the denominator the same. So here's our equal sign. So we get 3/5 x on the left side equals 1 minus 8 is -7/8. So now I have to undo the divided by 5 on this left side because I'm solving for x. So I can multiply both sides by 5. Remember, that's like 5/1. By doing that, these 5's cancel, and I'm left with 3x equals, when you multiply fractions, you multiply the top, and then you multiply the bottom. So -7 times 5 is -35, and 8 times 1 is 8. Getting lots of review here with fractions, so if you need to go back and re-watch, do that. Then you're going to divide both sides by 3. So you have a fraction on top divided by, if we make this a fraction on the bottom, that fraction would be 3/1. So remember, we're doing all of this without a calculator. So -35/8 divided by 3/1 is the same thing as -35/8 times 1/3. Because remember, when you are dividing a fraction by anything, to simplify that, you multiply by the reciprocal. So then our final answer becomes multiply the top, multiply the bottom, so negative 35 over 24. So again, if you need to rewatch this video to review your fraction rules, then make sure you do that. I'm going to show you one more thing. So I'm going to erase a little bit of number 1, or all of number 1. And I want to show you one more thing before we call it a day with this video. There are going to be times where your fraction is written like this. So your numerator has an x minus 3 on top. That's different than the others that we've done. So you're going to undo the plus 1 by subtracting 1 from both sides. And you get x minus 3 over 5 equals 5. Just like we did on the other problems, you want to undo the divided by 5 by multiplying by 5. So that cancels. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So we get x minus 3 equals 25. And then we add 3 to both sides, and you get x equals 28. So sometimes your fractions might have a little bit more to them for the numerator, but you still clear them the same way. Okay, go ahead and get started on your worksheet, and then you guys have a quiz to play. Email me if you have any questions.